Hi, this is Debbie. There is a variety of things I want to share with you today. I want to talk about the Hex Chart, which my friend Sandy Alnuck has just released, and this video is part of a blog hop related to that. And then I'm going to move on to my findings of using the Misti stamping tool and also some basic masking techniques so that you get the impression that one image is in front of others, and then on to some Copic colouring. I've been using this colour chart which arranges markers according to their colour and then according to the shades within that colour. Therefore, if I want to grab a red, I reach for R22, R24, R27, and the shading is all laid out for you. Today, Sandy has released her Hex Chart, which organises markers not according to the numbers written on the cap, but according to how they actually appear to the eye. So dark blues of a certain shade are grouped together, dark greens of a certain shade are grouped together. And having coloured this chart in, I actually found it quite surprising how many colours are very similar to each other. Some of those greens grouped down in the corner, it's very difficult to actually work out the difference between them. And it highlights to you perhaps where you've got gaps in your marker collection, or equally where you've got plenty of overlaps. I really can't tell the difference between Y21 and Y23 and Y32. Those two colours look very much the same to me, and if I was actually had this chart beforehand, I would question whether I actually needed to buy both of those markers. So this is an interesting look at looking at your markers according to their visual colour rather than according to the numbers on the cap. I have a very simple card to share with you today. It's roughly 3.5 by 5 inches, which is a 4-bar card. I've got a panel of £80 Nina Solar White, and the card base is made of £110 Nina Solar White. And I'm going to be using the Baby Party Animal set from Simon Says Stamp, and the sentiment is from another Simon Says Stamp set called Flowers on My Mind. I recently purchased the Misti stamping tool. I wasn't sure if I needed this tool at first. I don't tend to make multiples of my cards, I tend to make one-offs, and the Misti tool initially occurred to me to be something that which would be great when you were making multiples, and I wasn't sure if I really needed it. And then I kept seeing more and more people using it and how effective it was to restamp your images if you'd made a mistake. If it hadn't quite stamped fully, it was actually great for just re-inking and laying back down the image, and everything would be perfectly aligned, and I began to think that this was actually something that would be worthwhile to me. Having stamped the cat and the balloon with the Misti and using Memento Tuxedo Black because I'm going to be Copic colouring and that's a good Copic friendly ink, I then want to move on to masking the cat so that I can stamp some of the other critters to make it look like they're actually putting their arms around the cat as if they're having a group hug. I've previously stamped the cat onto some post-it note and I've trimmed that out, and I keep those on the back of my stamp pocket. I keep them so that I can use them again, and there I've just finished laying that down on top of the stamped image, and now I'm lining up where I want the monkey to be, and again I'm going to stamp with Memento Tuxedo Black, and the post-it note mask will protect the cat so that the arm of the monkey looks like it's going behind the cat rather than being stamped on top of him. Even though I've only had the Misti for a relatively short amount of time, I've already felt that this has been worthwhile me purchasing. For example, while stamping this rabbit, I pressed down over the rabbit, and then when I lifted the door I noticed that the ears hadn't stamped fully, and by closing the door and pressing down again over the ears I was able to get a perfect impression. I didn't plan that misstamped ears for this video, it's just the way it happened, and really does demonstrate that this is a valuable tool to have, and enabled me to create this masking card with a little more confidence that if I did mess up that you can just restamp things. So having lifted the masking paper up, I've now got this scene where the cat appears to be being hugged by his two friends, and I can go ahead and colour everything in. I use a very basic colouring technique, which is to work with a light shade and then a medium shade and then a dark shade and then back through the shades back down to the lightest shade, blending all the time and just leaving the last little highlight until the end to give that impression of dimension. A dark brown is also a great way to add some depth of shading in a red colourway. I'm going to carry on colouring these critters in now. I'll leave the marker caps at the top so you'll be able to see which ones I've used, and I'll play a little music and I'll come back once I've finished colouring. As this is a simple card and I'd not created any background for the critters, I just outlined them lightly with a BG10 marker to make them pop and just to give them a little something behind them. And to finish, I'm blending out the BG10 marker with the Zero Blender marker just so that it fades off into the background and doesn't leave a harsh line. I've lined up my sentiment from the Samosis stamp Flowers on My Mind set on the Misti, and I'm using VersaFine Onyx Black to stamp. And I actually got a really good impression first time. However, again, the Misti would have given me that confidence that if that hadn't stamped properly, that I could have just laid the stamp back down and got the impression right on the second attempt. I've added some 3M foam adhesive. I've got that big roll of 3M tape. I've added some of that to the back of the panel, and then excuse my head poking in there while I line that up on the card base. And that more or less completes the card. The only thing I'm going to do now is just add a little bit of glossy accents onto the balloon, and that will give that balloon just a lovely bit of shine to finish. Here's another look at Sandy's Hex Chart. I hope you'll go and check it out. I'll leave a link in my video description, and there'll also be links and more information on my blog post. I'll leave you with some photographs now of the finished card, and thank you for joining me today.